Greetings, friends. Operational situation on the 19th of May. It will be a short broadcast, short companies. We will analyze only the main points. This is the Kharkiv border region, 2 directions, and Krasnogorovka. We will start with the Liptsovsky direction, where active hostilities continue. Today, we received information that there is an active assault on the suburban settlements near the reservoir, which we talked about yesterday with you, that the vector of attack from Gluboko by the Russian troops remains. At the same time, footage of further attacks between the Liptsovsky forest and Glubokoi was published, that is, everyone also in the area of the dominant height is showing the greatest activity. So far, we have not recorded any significant changes. There is information about the progress in the area of suburban settlements. But so far we have not found any video confirmations of this information. Including our domestic telegram channel stated that the enemy has partial success, but so far it is difficult to assess it, because there is no visual data. In any case, these assaults have been going on since yesterday. No more changes. As for the Volchansk direction, Staritsa and Volchansk along Staritsa, the main fighting continues along Sadovaya Street. It means that from Bukrovatka, Russian troops attacked naturally further south to the bridge, including across the Seversky Donetsk River. And now they are trying to gain a foothold and move further along Sadovaya Street. Therefore, our main focus is on Sadovaya Street from their side. Now we turn to Volchansk. In Volchansk, we have changes, and some changes were supplemented just before the broadcast. Shots of fighters in the SSU were published, where they inflict fire damage, first of all, to the Russian infantry, under the Gagarin Street Bridge. Therefore, this suggests that the Russian troops managed to move further from the hospital, so in a southerly direction, from Shevchenko Street to Gagarin Street, and were still published. So, the situation looks conditionally as follows, yes. And there were also published shots along the street of the Lousy Grass on the 1st of May. Therefore, we also fixed the promotion. Or rather, what have we recorded along this street? It was recorded that Russian troops controlled several houses. Well, they continued the assault operations both in the south and in the east direction. Therefore, for now we are adding a red zone on the site where their presence is recorded. At the same time, it is important to note that after the promotion of the Gothic, as well as the northwestern part of Volchansk, after advancing in this area, the enemy naturally made attempts to advance to the western part, which we have south of the Volcha River, both in the area of the bridge and in the area of an attempt to make a small landing. However, there are difficulties in the form of a river. Well, at the same time, it begins to push from the second direction, that is, it puts a very serious emphasis on moving to the western part of Volchansk. Now, as for the northeastern part and the northern part as a whole. So there is a lot of contradictory information. Attacks continue in the northeast. We have supplemented the gray zone in this area twice, as you remember. That is, the attacks were from the area of conditionally Pletonovka. According to the landings in the area of the beam, there was progress, and today the vector of attacks in this area also remains. However, there is no visual evidence that the Russian troops have managed to advance yet. We have a lot left to clarify in the northernmost part, because Russian troops are operating in very small groups so far. In other words, as you remember, they used large assault groups, and now they are moving back to small ones. It is clear that they are trying to advance further. Again, they are being received today against the background of the fact that there is not much progress in information about what has been stabilized. But I will say again that it's too early to talk about anything, because stabilization looks a little different. So far, we see further enemy advance. It's too early to talk about stabilization. We go further. As for the Kupisk of the Svidovsky site, Kislovka is under further pressure in the direction of Ivanovka. And there are assault actions on the part of Russian troops in the settlement of Perstovaya. At the same time, attempts are being made not only to advance from Starch, but there is a message that from a small landing, which we have located north of Novoselovsky. There are also attempts, that is, to advance for the railway. Well, actually, taking into account the position of the formed ledge, yes, northeast of Berestovo. What do we see? Firstly, there is a forest belt, yes, part of which is already controlled by Russian troops. The second point is that they are also starting to push from the north in the direction of that very forest belt. And, of course, they increase the pressure from the forest. Therefore, their plan is very clear. In principle, we have already talked with you somehow, even before this advance in the direction of Berestovo began, that one of the goals is just the same Stelmakovka, and attempts can be made to move further north. That is, the capture, I told you, of Berestov, and then a strike in the south direction. But as I said, this is the most pessimistic scenario. Unfortunately, so far it is being implemented by the enemy. Attempts to occupy Berestov, and further, in the direction of Stelmakovka, to hit its northwestern part and western, respectively. As for the activity with Kolomichika, there is also, but it has a positional character. This is the work of small assault groups. But it should be added that the pressure only from the enemy increases on this segment. Because, of course, they can now get positions that give them the opportunity to put pressure from two directions on Stelmakovka. Time will tell. There was an attack in the Chasiver direction. We casually talked about it the day before yesterday. It was the 17th, and they said that there would be a result by the evening. So, the footage was published. The Kraken Special Forces repelled this attack. 20 armored vehicles were involved. Movement means from Kromav's side. There's another map of Kromav for some reason not renamed. So from the side of Kromav, along the road of traffic, well, and the entrance to the very hours of Yar. From the side of the Kraken fighters, there were several strikes on a multi-story building, and subsequently it was cleaned up. Therefore, Russian troops were pushed back to their original positions. We do not record any changes. Although it was a serious attack, very serious. Well, and 20 armored vehicles, you know. How many personnel were involved, it was possible to reflect. Let's just say, before it was assumed, that Russian troops would try to get positions in the Golyabovsky to Stupki reserve. In its northern part, yes, which provided, were the dominant height passes, which would provide more advantageous positions. Plus the Orlov tract, but they still tried to storm head-on, but failed, not succeeded. Managed to repel this attack. And we turned to Krasnogorovka, because a lot of information was asked to comment on, very different information, including the enemy claims that he managed to surround the Solnikny microdistrict. Somehow, the military commander Fisherman draws that it was possible to advance, so along Geologichnaya Street, then along several streets of the private sector, and, accordingly, along Nakimev Street in the direction of the hospital. And the capture of the hospital. Well, and the actual surroundings of the residential district Sunny. I'll tell you straight out, such events definitely do not take place without photo and video recording. This I assure you. Because any advance, as you see, there were a lot of them on the part of the Russian troops. That is, in the northeastern part of the flag. In one of the buildings in the south of the plant there is a flag, then in the northern part, there is a flag. That is, there was a flag everywhere. And here are such promotions, well, the flag would obviously be set. I guarantee you, at least the neighborhood is sunny, because to show that they still managed. Naturally, there is a lot of misinformation going on. The situation remains dynamic in Krasnogorovka. Even I would say that the north of the red zone, which we have marked, is not always in red, it is also in gray. Because there are very heavy battles with varying success. Therefore, this is our situation. This is what concerns Krasnogorovka. There is also further pressure on Georgievka, although we are talking about it at least now, and there is a lot going on along several streets. But we do not record what is again stated from the Russian side, again by the military commander Ribber that well. They managed to occupy most of it already allegedly. Georgievsky, again, I repeat, also works. Remember, any house, immediately installing a flag in any direction. We do not record this. There is no information from the AFU fighters, there is no visually confirmed information. There are not even strikes on the positions of Russian troops anywhere in the gray zone right now. That is, we do not fix either the farm, or, of course, there is simply no further progress. Where Volchansk is fixed, as I have shown you, we immediately note this, because the presence of the enemy is really fixed there. Everything else, I will say, there will be a lot of misinformation in the near future. This is the situation we have at the front.